Hello, thanks for joining us. We're going to start straight after this.
Hi, welcome to the Tariq and Joe Show. In this series, Tariq and Joe explore the topics of growing up as a teenager and young adult in the UK. They offer a range of advice on school, college, and university education, studying for exams, social etiquette, mental health, emotional well-being, and more. Welcome to today's episode with your hosts, Tariq and Joe.
Okay, welcome back. In today's mini-series, me and Joe are going to be talking about all different issues relating to growing up as a teenager, studying as a young adult, and these are all orientated around the theme of education to help you develop not only as a person, but also as a student, because many of the skills I feel are kind of transferable life skills, which will serve you post-study. So when you finished all of your studies, these skills will help you in life. So today's topic is about work habits and routines. So Joe, what's your thoughts on work habits and routines, and what are your work habits and routines?
I think it's important to have that kind of routine. Just keeps you on track and helps you maintain some kind of focus. It can be a difficult thing if a routine takes over, because then you're not allowing time for other things that are just as important in your life. You know, some leisure time, some time with friends and family. So routine although in terms of being a student is important, you have to build into your routine some elements of time for yourself as well. So that often gets overlooked, I think. From my own perspective, I like to get into some routines where, under this COVID situation, you're splitting things up into manageable chunks and more sort of bite-sized snacks of things, because overdoing one thing or another is not good for you. It's proven not to be good for people's mental health under these circumstances, has it? So I think personally, I've adapted and come up with a strategy where I'm doing things in sort of little chunks, a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there, and it's sort of helping me split things up, keep things fresh. So we can go back to talking about where we discussed the idea of doing the worst things first in the day, and I live my life now by that principle, where I get up, my routine is to confront and do the hardest things in the day first, rather than put them off, because previously I would have been the other way around. I would have just procrastinated and put things off, and that sort of takes its toll on you and starts to weigh heavy, knowing that you've got these things to do later in the day. So I like to think that I can work in a more effective process now, where I start off the day with the hardest things and just get stuck in, and gradually throughout the day everything becomes easier. That's the theory anyway. Depending on like times of the year, how busy I am, it doesn't always work that way, but it's helpful. That's the message here. It's helpful, isn't it? So yeah, I think that's to answer your point. It's important to have some form of routine that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've found, kind of reflecting on my life now, I think we're both about the same age, we're about 40. Looking back,
40,
I found
43 this time.
Oh, there's only a couple of years older, but I found that when I was successful at a task, usually it was from having consistent habits, and kind of having a rough plan. You don't have to have necessarily a detailed plan, but have like a schedule which you follow. So, for example, Monday to Friday, you know what you're doing, like nothing like we discussed last time, in morning, afternoon, and evening, so that you have some sort of routine. And one thing I tell my students as well is, especially now during COVID, have a daily routine, because without daily routine, sometimes I think for a lot of people, structure is very important, and lack of structure causes a lot of stress and anxiety amongst people.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we've both worked with people from with special needs backgrounds, particular people who are on the autistic spectrum. They need that kind of structure. They prefer that kind of structure in their life, and it's like you say, it's important to have that So for those individuals, yes, it's important. Now, there are other kinds of individuals out there that are more like to be a bit more flexible with structure, and that helps them become more creative. I would say that I am one of those kind of people where too much of a rigid structure is not a good thing for me. I like to have a bit of flexibility there, so I can be, otherwise it stifles my creativity. Creativity is another interesting discussion we could have, because it impacts on your productivity as well. Now, if you were to look at some artists out there, for example, arts-based kind of researchers, they are more often than not in that kind of bracket where it's not like switching a light on, turning a light switch on and off. Creativity doesn't come always like that. It can be in phases and in periods. You know, I've worked with some students recently where, yeah, they work in that exact process where they'll have particular periods where they're actually really productive, and when they're on a roll like that, it's about encouraging and keeping that going. But there might be other periods throughout the year where that's simply not there, and you know, that's where the difficulties lie, and that's where perhaps going back to what you're saying, they might need to fall back on some kind of more rigid structure then. But you've got to be careful, because you've got to consider when is the best time to be productive. It's not the same for everybody, and when we go into like a school environment or a business environment, for example, everything is structured around particular times, and sometimes it doesn't like draw into line with your best time for being productive. So students will say to me, for example, I can't work very well during the day. I do all of my assignments at night, and I try to think and have discussions with them about, well, actually that's okay. If that works for you, then go with it. You know, it's not always healthy to stay up all night doing work, but if that is where your best creative juices come to life, then go with it. Yeah. In a sports setting, you look at when all of the sort of world records for sprinting have been broken. It's always in the evening, so there's something that correlates there with actually the best time for them to be productive is in the evening. Very rarely have world records been broken first thing in the morning, so that could be something about how the body needs time to come around and get the brain going, and the body going. Yeah, so I think something about going back to structure and routines. I mean, you look at all other sports like football, rugby. I know a lot of it is to do with TV and media and fan bases and fandom, but a lot of it takes place in the afternoon and the evening, so that's the best time for them to be creative. You don't see a lot of it happening first thing in the morning, do you? However, personally, I think that I'm a morning person now. I never used to be, but I think like I get up early in the morning. I've got that sort of quiet time to myself to think and gather my thoughts, and that is a good time for me to be productive, and that routine helps me. But like we said, there's no one size fits all here, is there?
Because Joe, I mean, one thing I would, if I could go back and say this even to myself as a teenager, is I think especially when you're young, you're still kind of developing your study skills. So I would say try lots of different routines, studying at different times, to try out what works better for you, and then that will kind of give you better insight into what is effective, because unless you try, you don't know.
Yeah, bang on. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's not good enough for somebody to sit there and say to you, right, you must be doing your work between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, and you've got to be creative during that time. Well, it doesn't work like that, does it? You know, so like you said, you've got to try lots of different times and methods, and choose something that works for you. Yeah. Now, the counter to that is that actually students carry on doing the same things, and they end up getting the same results. Something needs to change, doesn't it? So that's where they need to consider changing their habits, changing their routines. Otherwise you're going to end up with the same results. It was Einstein, I think, that came up with that kind of phrase, where you keep doing the same things and expecting different results, and that's the definition of insanity. So something needs to change somewhere, doesn't it? Going back to what you're saying about a routine, I do think it helps you keep disciplined, particularly if you're doing things like research projects. So you've got to get into some kind of regular pattern of working. Helps you keep to the deadlines, and also helps you when you cope under pressure. We talk about like university students or college students, for example. They start to sit there and think, why are we getting all these deadlines all at this same time? And I can't balance it all out. It's overwhelming for me. Well, actually, it's setting you up for the big wide world when you graduate or move on from your course, because that is what is to be expected in the real world. You said at the start about transferable skills. That's what is trying to be instilled in you here, is if you can cope with deadlines and figure a pattern of study out or a pattern of working out, then it's going to help you in beyond and for the rest of your life. Yeah, of course. I mean, going back to that idea of creativity, I mean, when I've been doing research projects, sometimes during the day, I'll have thoughts that come into my head. And maybe in the evening, I'll have thoughts that come into my head. And at that current time, I'm not sat down doing my research. So what I have to do is I have to capture those thoughts through notes, and then just some prompts and some things to go back to, that when I am sat at my desk and doing my research, I've already documented those notes, and they're going to help me form my sort of project that way. And it's important for people to understand that you can't, we can't sit you down at a desk and expect you to, like, there you go, click, start writing now. Well, it doesn't happen, does it? So sometimes throughout the day or throughout the week, I'll have various thoughts and like reflections about particular things, and it's important at that time to capture them. So maybe through a journal or just scraps of paper lying around, just gather them all together, and then when I go back to do my research, the creativity has already taken place. So then I'm able to digest it and make sense of it a lot better.
Joe, I really like what you're saying there about kind of it kind of reminds me of a situation which happened with me about 13 years ago, where I got into writing poetry, for example, just as a hobby. And sometimes you can't force creativity. It sometimes just comes at the most unexpected times. So what I actually did was I had, like you said, actual journal, a little notebook where I jot down notes, and I kept it by my bed. And I had a dream once about a poem. I've literally, as soon as I woke up, wrote it all down before I forget. And I think what I learned from that is that when you do work, for example, you have like a timetable to study at home, and you do some work, and then you forget about it and you go and do something else. I think what the brain does, I mean, don't quote me on this, guys, but I think it sets in place the subconscious to start solving problems. So even though consciously you're not aware about the problem or the solution, your subconscious is working it. So that's why at the most random of times you'll get an idea, and then you should jot it down. So I can really 100% see where you're coming from in terms of having a journal to jot things down. So I really like that point.
Yeah, it's like brainstorming, isn't it? It's like when you're asked to make some kind of mind map. Well, the mind map is taking place for me at different times of the day or different times of the week, and I'm just having to like filter that into like notes that I can use later. Now, another example that happened that might be relevant for students is when I was doing my undergrad degree, I was with a lot of younger, more immature people who were making lots of noise, very distracting. And I'm coming into class to sit at a computer and try and do some of my assignment work. And the thought process, it's something that you need to take care of and sit and think about. And I personally need quiet space to do that. Now, some people are very different, like learning styles and working styles to me, where they can work effectively with noise and distraction around them. But personally, I couldn't. So what I chose to do there was sit and do the note taking and the thinking processes in a quiet space at home. And then when I was coming into the institution, the campus, to sit and do the assignment work at the computer, the thought processes had taken place elsewhere. So all I was doing at that point then was copying up and typing things up. So that sort of structure helped me, because there was nowhere that I could sit in that room with all that noise and distraction going on, talking about things that had been going on the night before, that kind of stuff. There was nowhere that I was able to do that and focus on my studies. So the thinking had to take place somewhere else. Another thing that I've talked to you about recently is, and I got this from a colleague, is driving to work is a learning space. You know, you sat in the car. Should that just be you driving your car and listening to the radio? Well, actually, no. You can be using that opportunity, that half an hour or so of driving to your workplace, as a place to learn. So I've been getting in the habit of getting blogs and sort of like podcasts up on my phone and listening to them on the way to work. And that's another thinking space, another place for you to sort of sit and think about what's to come for the day, or what's going, an additional sort of way to get lecture material into your head, away from distraction, if that makes sense. So that's been something that's helped me as well, especially when you've got a busy working day ahead and you don't always have the time and the energy and the space in which to do additional learning. Then make the most of that journey to work. Yeah. Some people might walk to work or be on the bike, and they could be doing that kind of thinking as well during that space.
So it's about kind of as well giving yourself space in maybe a different environment as well, and being aware that sometimes insights can come to you. I mean, Joe, I don't know if it's happened with you, but for example, during lockdown, I try and go for a walk every day if I can, for about half an hour or so, just to get some fresh air. And I find that when I go to a different environment, my head clears my thoughts, clears my mind. And then when I return back to a task, my mind is a bit clearer. Like, I guess, a bit of a cobwebs. I mean, do you find that with your cycling and stuff?
Yeah. Just somewhere to take yourself away, to clear the mind. I've been playing cricket for a few years with lots of Sri Lankans who come from a Buddhist background, and they do meditation, and it's just a simple process of 10 minutes every day with nothing, no technology, nothing, just breathing, you and yourself, just in your own space for 10 minutes, trying to get into the pattern of breathing and clear your mind of rubbish. And just the idea that they've spoken to me about is of getting the mind to a place where you're thinking about zero, nothing. And that helps their well-being, because your brain's not crowded with lots of rubbish, and you're able to then move from that into the rest of your day and focus on what lies ahead. So although I'm not a Buddhist myself, I do understand where they're coming from with that, and it's been quite helpful, particularly as I've in the last couple of years found out that I've got asthma. So that pattern of breathing and being at one with yourself has been quite helpful for me. Yeah.
Oh, I like that, Joe. I mean, it reminds me of if we could making a metaphor analogy, that our mind is like a computer, and then meditation is like emptying a recycle bin.
Yeah, or rebooting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think that's the right kind of thing that we're talking about here. Is it's important for your well-being, even as a student that's crowded with lots of assignments and deadlines, that you're able to give yourself some space to have some time for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, Joe, so what would you say in summary then about work habits, work routines? I mean, how I kind of would interpret it is try lots of different things, be aware of when you work best, when you're most productive, and keep a journal on you to maybe capture any kind of important ideas which you have.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it simple like that, and also bear in mind that any routine that you have has got to be flexible. you've got to allow time for other things in your life to come into play. Everything has got to be in balance. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, guys, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.